Hello everyone, welcome back to another Grimgar video. Before I begin, I should probably mention that it's been a while since I've made a larger video on my page. I think about 2 weeks, maybe even a month. And that's kind of because YouTube has changed a little bit. Now shorts on YouTube can be over a minute long, so I can just put like videos out in a much faster rate, just make them shorter and give it to you that way. And for some reason it makes me more money. I don't know, I don't make up the rules. But I'm still planning on making larger videos talking about light novels and books. So expect these videos to come out here and there as well. That being said, we're currently at the worst part of Grimgar, and that's one of the reasons why this video took so long, because getting through this book was a challenge. Grimgar is very well known for having little plot progression in their books because it's mostly a character-driven book. But oh my god, volume 13 and 14 are just so slow and just so, to me at least, uninteresting. And volume 14 has so many problems that I can't get behind, and it's one of the reasons it took me so long to get this video out there. But I'll get more into the details of why I dislike this book at the end when I give my overall review, which, surprise, is not going to be very high. But first, we got to give our summary and go into those details. I will, however, be skipping over a large portion of this book, because, again, not much happens, and there's a lot of fluff in this book. This is the book that has the most flashbacks and backstories out of all the books so far. Characters that don't matter get flashback stories, and it's ridiculous. If you enjoy videos like this, hit the like button, share, tell me in the comments down below. And if you want to get this book yourself, I don't know why you would, but if you want to, I left my affiliate link for Amazon in the description and in the comments if you want to buy this book. But let's get started with Grimgar Fangs and Ash, Volume 14. Parano-mania.
What the fuck is this piece of shit?
The story begins with Haru and Alice walking through a crimson forest. While walking in the forest and conversing with each other, a giant baby comes out of nowhere and attacks Alice and Haru. Alice wraps Haru and themselves in a giant cocoon of black veins things coming off their shovel, and the baby proceeds to pound on the cocoon. The baby then gets bored and takes the cocoon and yeets it across, like, the entire world. Like, it goes really freaking far. Like, Haru is actually sitting here thinking inside the cocoon how long it's gonna take for them to hit the ground. That's how long they were up in the air. The scene then switches to Shiharu having her backstory revealed, and it lets you know that she was heavily bullied as a child. And we find out why she has such bad body dysmorphia is because she was bullied, surprise, in school. Honestly, it's Japan. The amount of crap I hear about how bad the schools are when it comes to bullying is insane. So this does not surprise me at all. But we see that her having this flashback is currently happening while she's in her monster form thing, where she's basically butt naked and shooting tears at Kuzaku. She even asks Kuzaku to embrace her. And well, because, you know, she's naked, Kuzaku kind of hesitates and is kind of nervous to even touch her. And it makes her freak out and she attacks him again. A guy called Gomi comes out of nowhere and protects Kuzaku and pulls him away. We shift back to Haru and Alice landing inside of a building. Then Alice got up immediately, realized what they were, pushed Haru out of the way, and ran out a door, and she actually ran past a mannequin dummy doll thing. Alice realized that they're in an area that is owned by one of her friends. The area they're in is called Doll Town, and it's owned by the doll master, Nue. Nue appears in front of them, and their body seems to be mutated or changed into some weird super slim doll thing that has a fancy hat and cloth covering up all their important bits. The moment Alice sees Nui, though, they immediately attack Nui without any hesitation. After a small scuffle, Alice decides that Haru and her gotta get the hell out of there. So they just leave. We then switch back to Kuzaku, who is actually walking with Nomi, the guy who saved him in the previous chapter. And this guy's expositing to him for half a chapter of his backstory about how he met his leader. Her name is Ayo, and everyone in her party are giant simps to Ayo. These fuckers are so annoying. Ayo then gives Kuzaku a new name that I think means Scruffy, I think it is. I'm not sure. Either way, doesn't matter. They're gonna go take Kuzaku and meet the king. Oh, also, for some reason, Ayo's party members are extremely jealous of Kuzaku because he's kind of handsome, and now he's also really buff. They're the worst. And they're really annoying, like I said earlier. Also, I should probably mention the other member of the party of the Ayo squad is Tumbe, which, yeah, I guess. They're, again, not very important. Trust me, you're not going to care about these characters. The next chapter is a flashback chapter that actually is valuable to the book because it actually explains some stuff for one of the characters we meet later on. It's about a very smart boy who is so intelligent that he can't really connect to anybody around him. He struggles with social skills and really caring about other people. Eventually, he gets into a car crash and he's one of the only survivors. After the car crash, he walks into a mist and he then disappears. For those of you paying attention, if you know about how weird this world is, mist and caves just seem to teleport you to different worlds, so I'm pretty sure you guys know where this is going. The next chapter actually has Haru and Alice going up a giant hill full of statues. Haru looks closer to the statues and realizes these are all like statues of the same person, and as they get closer and closer to the top of the hill, the statue's quality increases by a lot. They get better and better. Statues are of a very pretty lady, by the way. When they get to the top, they find Ahiru, the guy from the previous book who kind of destroyed a building and tried to kill Haru and Alice. Alice proceeds to provoke Ahiru by mentioning the name of the person who I believe the statues are modeled after, which is Yamaki. And then Alice proceeds, with Haru's help, to destroy the statues all around him. Ahiru is also extremely miserable and very clearly, like, not in a good place, and Alice seems to take advantage of him in a bad place and actually vows to kill the king and wants Ahiru to help him. Ahiru actually begrudgingly agrees, and Alice tells him he's going to be a spy for them. The next chapter goes back to Kuzaku and him dealing with the Io squad. They are heading to the king, and Io explains that the king's got the ability to turn people into shadows, which is basically just like nothing creatures that are kind of his spies, and they can see for the king. And apparently one of their party members got turned into a shadow, and another one turned into a half monster, and they had to actually kill them. And we also find out that their last member is imprisoned in the king's dungeon. And that's one of the reasons why Io squad is like listening to the king right now, because they have someone that they want to save, which is actually surprisingly like nice of them. Like, they seem like jerks most of the time, but they seem to have each other's backs to a degree. So that's interesting. They walk into the king's throne room, and immediately Kuzaku gets hit by an insanely powerful aura. This forces Kuzaku onto his knees, and also the rest of the party onto their knees as well. And Kuzaku also notices that there is a girl inside of a birdcage. He also notices the king's throne is also like a door, so the throne is built around the door itself. The king talks to Io and accepts Kuzaku as a servant. Ahiru then walks into the throne room, and the king just kind of starts talking shit and starts saying something along the lines of Yamaki's singing is something that he really enjoys, and Ahiru clearly is not happy with that comment. And very clearly, we're supposed to realize that Yamaki is the girl inside the cage, and Ahiru has some kind of connection to her. But we switch back to Haru's perspective again. Him and Alice are sitting outside of the king's castle, and they see Ahiru and the rest of the group actually walking behind him. Haru sees Kuzaku and immediately tries to run to go meet him. Alice stops him immediately because, you know, they don't want to get caught. Alice says it's a good idea to meet Ahiru at the Iron Tower instead, where they can get information and not get spied on by the shadows in the area. Haru and Alice go to the Iron Tower and are planning to meet Ahiru there, but during their travel to the tower, a bunch of dolls appeared out of nowhere, and Nui actually appears and tries to attack Haru and Alice. Haru quickly comes up with a plan. Alice distracts Nui, and Haru goes into stealth and grabs on top of Nui. He uses his power to actually meld with her, and he sees a giant flashback of her backstory. We see why she's so obsessed with Alice, and Nui also has some kind of body dysmorphia that's extremely unhealthy. Haru tries his best to pull her back into her own mind and actually like fix her brain with his powers, but then the scene changes, and I should probably mention here and now, because we're about halfway through the video, that there's a bunch of like flashbacks that I'm skipping over because they don't really contribute anything to the story. One of which is of Yamaki and Ahiru and their backstory and how they met and how he's a rock star and she's like it's a whole thing that has no real like impact to the story. And there's also a flashback chapter to how the king found the door to what they call heaven, which is one of the reasons he like built the chair there. It's mostly just there to explain why he built the chair, but it's a long chapter of just basically characters that don't contribute much to the story and why the king is the way he is when it comes to that specific door. I thought I would mention it here because I'm not going to go into big detail about it, but that's basically what it is. The next chapter switches to Mary and Satora, and Mary's acting extremely weird, and Satora keeps asking her about it, but she keeps dodging the question. Mary's personality seems to have changed, and from what Satora can tell, it feels kind of menacing. They're kind of just wandering around. They don't really know what they're doing. Also, Kichi's become like a super cat, because it turns out like Kichi and Kuzaku have the exact same power, and Kishi's gotten to the size of a giant tiger lion thing, and is just huge. They find a village full of people that are just like not really like interacting with them in any meaningful way. Matter of fact, they're just kind of avoiding them and staying as far from them as possible. And then out of nowhere, they hear a giant voice kind of like ringing through the town. It lists off the rules of the town, which are: Rule 1, be quiet, don't make a fuss. Rule 2, fighting is bad. Be peaceful, gentle, and fun. Rule 3, you can't leave this town, ever. Rule 4, imitate everyone. Obviously, Satora and Mary are both like, well, fuck that noise. And they immediately try to leave, but two men are standing in front of the entrance that they just came from, and a fight breaks out. It is then shown that apparently Satora can use Emba's core to actually summon Emba. The magic of this world lets her imbue the core with some powers and essentially make Emba appear wherever she wants him to. And he fights just as well as he did back in like the other world, if not even better. And Emba and Kishi both fight these guys at pretty, like, evenly, funny enough. Like, Kishi is actually kind of a monster. It's kind of insane. Kuzaku shows up and actually breaks up the fight. It turns out these two guys are part of Ayo's squad, the guys we were introduced earlier on, Gomi and Tomba. Ugh, I hate their names. And seeing Kuzaku, she starts crying. If I'm being honest, it's kind of a mixed thing. Because, one, Kuzaku looks really funny because how buff he is. And two, she really missed Kuzaku. And Ayo, being Ayo, which, by the way, is a cunt, starts arguing with, like, Satora a little bit. Because, why not at this point, honestly? I mentioned that Ayo is extremely, like, obnoxious and kind of a narcissist. You know how, like, characters in this story have a power called Narcy, which is self-love. Ayo is actually a legit narcissist, though. And it's heavily implied through the text that she uses her power to make herself look prettier. So this picture of Ayo isn't actually what she looks like. And she gives all of her people in her party, like, really rude names, like trash, scum, or in the case of Kuzaku, scruffy, if we translate them from Japanese to English. And she just seems to be outright rude to other women for no real reason. So she's one of those bitches. Kuzaku then explains to Satora that they're there to actually power up their abilities by destroying dream monsters. The next chapter goes back to Haruhiro's POV, and it's essentially him waking up after basically trying to get Noe's brain to, like, cooperate with him and bring her back to reality. And, well, Alice realizes that Noe is actually dead. Haru, though, because of his, like, mental merging with Noe, kind of feels terrible about this and tries giving her CPR. And you hear him being really distraught about this. Merging with people's brains, like, really freaks Haru out in a way because he feels really bad for them. He sees all the things they've done their entire lives, so he feels really attached to Noe now. Which, admittedly, is probably one of the more interesting parts of this book. After basically what seems like a couple minutes of him trying to give her CPR, they give up and realize it's a better idea to actually give her a better burial. Alice decides that it's a good idea to actually carry her up the tower, where they eventually planned to meet Ahiro with. And they brought her up there, and essentially what happens in this tower is if you actually stay here for too long in the tower, you will turn to rust. So they left her body up there, and eventually it's gonna get turned to rust. And there's already a person up there fully turned into rust. And I guess that character has an entire, like, thing of, like, why they were up there, but I'm not gonna go into it. After a really long time, they decided to go back down the tower and meet Ahiru and discuss what they're gonna do. He proceeds to tell them everything he knows about Kuzaku, Ayo, where they went, and he just tells them that he really wants to get his girlfriend out of that cage. That's all he really cares about. And they just basically make an agreement that they're gonna go kill the king now, and they're gonna first go check on Ayo, Kuzaku, and their party, and recruit them to help take out the king. During this conversation, however, Haru does ask them about the magical door, because they were talking about an exit out of the world. And they inform him about everything that went on with the door and why the king is defending it. It's pretty simple. The king doesn't want anybody to leave this world because he thinks that anybody who is in this world belong to him. After this, they do start searching for Kuzaku and the rest of the party. And they kind of get stuck in a random little part of the story, which I'm just going to talk about it because it's kind of funny. It's an area where it's full of pebbles. You pile the pebbles up, and the pebbles, like, force you to keep piling them back up because they fall back over. And if you just check the entire area, it's full of stacks of pebbles. Haru has to force himself to stop stacking pebbles and get the rest of the two out of there because it's just the most random side tangent thing ever in the story that doesn't need to be there, but it's kind of funny because they're all just mad they're stuck there piling pebbles. And apparently this is not Alice's first time being stuck there either. But Haru just says fuck it, grabs them, and just runs away from the area as fast as possible. After this, they eventually do get to the town where Kuzaku and the rest of the party are at, and Kuzaku finds out this the hard way. If you level up too quickly in this world, you actually lose control of your mind. And Kuzaku is currently on a mindless murder spree in the town. To make it very simple for everyone, gathering too much energy and power in this world is dangerous. You have to actually do it incrementally to not lose control of yourself. Which is funny that nobody told Kuzaku about this, but I guess Ayo and their party didn't actually know about it themselves. Speaking of Ayo and her party basically just, Gomi and the other guy are just getting slapped down by Kuzaku. They're not doing anything to this guy right now. Kuzaku's just that strong right now. Satora's even doing her best to actually calm Kuzaku down and try to, stop him from going bananas. But out of nowhere, Haruhiro actually goes into stealth, gets behind Kuzaku quickly, and grabs onto him and actually helps calm him down and power him down by using his abilities. Which I don't entirely understand how that works, but apparently Haru can just turn off Kuzaku's madness. I don't get it. Apparently this is something similar he did to Nue, but it doesn't really explain why Kuzaku doesn't die from it, essentially. I guess Nue was just too far gone while Kuzaku was just freshly turned, so I guess that's that. After that, all the characters kind of sit there and talk to each other and just try to figure out what they want to do. Ayo's party is very okay with going to take out the king, by the way. They were very just, let's go do that. Didn't even hesitate whatsoever. And Haru picks up on Mary acting different immediately. He pegs that shit quick. Throughout the book, he does kind of feel like that this isn't Mary. The thought crosses his head constantly. But after some dialogue and conversing with the party and having the characters kind of almost get into fights here and there because you got Alice just fanning the flames because she's a troll. Everyone comes up with a plan and they start moving out. They go up a hill and immediately, conveniently, they end up meeting Shiharu. Shiharu immediately attacks all of them, and Kuzaku comes up with the best plan possible ever. He runs up to Shiharu, rips his armor off, and proceeds to flex in the most bodybuilder positions possible. And this distracts everyone, including Haru for a second, is just how impressive his body is. But it works on Shiharu. She's enamored by him, and Haru goes into stealth and gets behind Shiharu and grabs her immediately. He tries to pull her consciousness back up from the darkness. He does stop himself, however, because he realizes if he keeps going, he's gonna end up killing her the same way he killed Nue. So he immediately backs off and tries to come up with another plan. And then Satora comes out of nowhere, takes Emma's soul orb thing, and use it to summon Emma around Shiharu. So she's stuck inside of Emma's body. Now that they captured Shiharu, they plan on taking her and everyone else and heading towards the king. Once they get to the king's throne room, they all immediately get hit by the king's pressure and get down on their knees. Everyone's focused solely on the giant king in front of them, and they can't see anything outside of their vision. It's just only directly the king. It's one of those weird things he has the power to do where he just kind of makes everyone look at him. The only one not kneeling is Emma. And this pisses off the king, and Satora tries to get Emma to actually kneel as well. Emma started shaking and actually fell over, and while the king's attention was on Emma, the pressure lightens up on Haru and the rest of the party. So Haru takes this moment to immediately go into stealth. Now that he's in stealth, his senses are pushed to their most highest limit, so he can actually see the rest of the room properly. The entire room is just littered with naked boys. Funny enough, it's weird. He also notices the girl in the cage above them. These boys around the room, by the way, are all basically clones, and Haru can tell that they're not all real because he can't really sense life in these things. He also realizes the giant king on the throne is also not real, but it's hard for him to really tell which one is real. Alice and Ahiru took longer to get down there in front of the king, and once the door opens to let them in, one of the boys actually turns and looks at the door, letting us know that that is the real king. Ahiru and Alice are both acting like Ahiru caught Alice, and Ahiru pushes Alice a little too hard, making Alice fall over, and Ahiru actually apologizes to Alice, giving them both away, and the king sees through their scheme. Alice then proceeds to vomit up their shovel weapon thing, and Alice is just ready to throw down immediately. Haru quickly moves through the real body of the king, and before he can grab onto him, he actually slips into the ground. Now that Haru's stealth was broken, the king freaks out and everything starts to go nuts. Everyone gets pushed to the ground because of the king's aura, except for Emma, who steps forward, explodes, and Shiharu comes out of him and starts attacking the king that is currently in front of them. Another giant fake king body appears, attacking Haru. However, Gomi actually gets in front of Haru and protects him with his giant shield, mirror thing he has. And while he's distracting the giant king, Haru goes into stealth. Whenever Haru's in stealth, it lets him see the actual room, which is kind of interesting. and he can see this kid come out of the ground and just suck the life out of Tombi and just kills him. The moment the kid actually sucks the life out of Tombi, however, Haru goes up to the kid and actually grabs onto him immediately. And since Haru is now absorbing all of this kid's like memories, he sees all the horrible things this kid has done. He's gone through a lot of stuff. He's used himself being as a kid to like trick people into letting them to their party. And we also find out that the power system in Parano is all bullshit. I won't go deep into it, but essentially he set up this like narrative early on to make people think there's only 4 types of power. So when their minds think there is only 4 types of power, that's all they're gonna get. If you go into Parano without any of this knowledge, you might actually get more powerful because you're not limiting yourself mentally to 4 different types of powers. This is why this kid's powers are whatever he really wants them to be, because Parano doesn't actually limit you, only you do. But Red, the loyal viewer says, how could characters like Kuzaku, Satora and Mary have limited powers? When throughout the story they were mostly by themselves and they had their powers follow the exact same power system of the world without being informed of how the power system actually works under this mindset. And to that I tell you, viewer, these are the worst 2 novels of Grimgar, viewer. Do you see why they're the worst 2 novels of Grimgar? But this kid got a lot of people killed, by the way. It's kind of insane. But Haru lets him know he doesn't need to struggle or fight so hard to stay alive anymore. He could just stop killing people and make peace with everyone. Haru promises to actually help the kid out, which is funny considering the next couple books, but we're not gonna get into that. He also realizes the kid's name is Rion, by the way. Rion then lets everyone go mentally. Like everyone can finally stand up and actually see what's going on in the room, and lets everyone in the prisons that he has out. Haru goes over to pick up Shiharu because they're going to leave immediately. We get a funny little interaction with Alice, kicking the shit out of Rion through the door to get him through the portal, and it was kind of funny. Haru decides to walk through the door with Shiharu in his arms. Alice waits before Haru goes through the portal to then turn to Ahiru and ask him if he's going to go with them. Ahiru decides to stay with his girlfriend in Parano for some reason, and that's kind of it. Everyone else is going through the portal though. We then get a scene where Haru is seemingly paralyzed and he doesn't know what's going on. Haru hears a man speaking to a young woman, and the voice of the young woman is very familiar to Haruhiro. It's Hayemu from the first light novel. The man tells her to administer the drug and erase their memory. She then proceeds to force drugs down Haruhiro's throat. And that's the end of volume 14. Thank God we're finally done with 13 and 14. I can't wait to get to 15. 15 is one of my favorite books. But for now, we'll talk more about the problems and good things about Volume 14. The amount of unnecessary fluff in Volume 14 is insane. This video is probably going to be very, very long. And just to let you know, I skipped over a lot of unnecessary content in this book. I let you guys know some unnecessary content because I thought it was kind of funny. Like the piling pebbles part of the book. But there's just so much world building for Parano that ultimately leads to nothing. And it's very just like a nothing thing. As I've stated in past books, it feels like you could just skip over 13 and 14 for the most part and not really miss much. And it's kind of true. It really bothers me. Like, you can't really say that about any of the other books because they have a more, like, plot progression and they actually have things that carry over to the next books. In this one, it doesn't really have much. The amount of flashbacks in this story that just feel incredibly unnecessary is kind of insane. I made a short talking about how many flashbacks were in this volume. By the time I got to the end of the book, I realized there's even more flashbacks that didn't even count in that short. And honestly, we didn't get enough stuff from like, and honestly, I kind of wish we got more from Satora and Mary because they were kind of interesting because we don't know what's going on with Mary. Well, we do later on, but we didn't in the time of this book. Shiharu ultimately gets absolutely really nothing to do in this book except be, you know, mentally gone. And we do get more of her backstory, but it's not like the most revolutionary thing, unfortunately. Like, we could have done this in flashbacks in like other books when she was asleep or something, and it would have probably like been just about the same, if I'm being honest. IO Squad also kind of feels like they're just kind of thrown into the book for the sake of like finishing off the Daybreakers clan, but they're just kind of there. They feel kind of worthless until they help Haru near the end, and that's kind of it. We're not talking like, they're not like a Typhoon. Typhoon Rocks actually did like a lot in the previous books that actually made them feel like they needed to be a part of it. They actually felt like reliable people to help Haru and his party. Well, IO Squad kind of just felt like they didn't feel that much stronger than Haru's party. I'll be honest. Like, I feel like Haru and them were about kind of equal to a degree. It was kind of funny. And all the extra side characters added in this book ultimately don't help at all and don't really show up again later on, or it just kind of like, again, this book just kind of feels like a waste of time for the most part. Like, it's not great, but it's also not the worst. I guess maybe it is the worst. I'm not sure. Like, I feel very mixed about this book when it comes to like how I should rate it, because I genuinely had a hard time getting through it, just like the last book. And these two are the ones that I have the hardest time getting through. One of the reasons it took so long to get this video, if I'm being honest. But ultimately, if I have to give this a score, I don't know if my scoring system has a D-, because I feel like this book is not a full F, because I did find some stuff that I enjoyed here and there. Like, Alice is trying to, like, make everyone fight each other at one point. It was pretty funny, because she was just talking shit. And Alice, overall, as a character, was kind of interesting to me. And the concept of the fact that the king is smart enough to, like, mess with everyone and to make everyone think the power system works in a way that doesn't actually work, to me sounds interesting and like a fun way of like you're looking at a power system that you limit only yourself if you listen to outside sources. So I can't give it like an F, but I'll just give it a D, honestly. Like, it could have been better. Honestly, I just can't wait to get volume 15. And I'll ask you guys on the community page if you guys want me to do the bonus volumes as well, because I don't know if I want to do the bonus volumes yet. But I'll ask you guys in the community section if you guys want to vote. I'll leave it down in the description when I put the post up. But thank you for making it this far in the video. And a special thank you to my subscribers over on my Twitch.